to me, it smacks of almost Kim Jong-un is running the Australian Parliament, not Albanese. But on the singular issue of Trump and his approach to war, he hates war. He's always hated war. He thinks it's bad for business. And fundamentally, that's what Trump is. He's a businessman. From a start point, we have at least 1.2 million people in this country that shouldn't be here, that should be going home. There is no desire to get hold of mass deportations and the remigration of the unassimilated, which is desperately needed if we're to turn the ship around.
Hello and welcome to Spectator Australia TV. I'm your host, online editor Alexandra Marshall, and today we are joined by a special friend of mine, an independent UK journalist, Chris Davies. Chris, welcome to the show.
Alexandra, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Look, I had to ring you up and chat to you because so much has been going on in the UK. It's completely insane. But one thing that you and I share between our two cultures is this new fascination with taxing the rich. Of course, you've got the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, in 800 years, who has decided that all the money from the Treasury is going to come from inheritance taxes and other taxes on the so-called rich, which has triggered what they're calling a Wexit, or a wealth exit from the country.
We must go further and faster in our mission to kickstart economic growth. I know that the challenges facing the global economy and the potential impact could be profound.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House will have heard that the Right Honourable Lady did not repeat the Chancellor's promise not to raise taxes.
Have you lost control of your MPs, Prime Minister? Will you rule out tax rises, Prime Minister?
What are your thoughts?
Well, those of us that are left behind are going to be paying increasing levels of taxation for increasingly poor public services. The numbers just don't add up. The government is borrowing record amounts of money to pay for today's spending. Terrible idea. There is no desire whatsoever for fiscal responsibility. I don't think Rachel Reeves is doing a particularly good job. I don't think anybody on that side of the fence would do a particularly good job, in fairness. But the alternatives are poor. I can see a situation where she ends up falling on her sword or is more likely pushed, because let's face it, who'd want to leave a grace and favour position? But it's now the same the world over, it seems. The whole of the developed world is awash with debt and no means to repay it. Our deficit is a mere 2.85 trillion sterling. Compare that with Trump's 37 trillion in USD. And I suppose in relative terms, we're no worse than anyone else. But in terms of macroeconomic reality, it's a disaster zone and it's only going to get worse. And at this point in time, having had 14 years of so-called conservatism, followed by a year now of hard leftism, it would be very easy to despair and think that the world is closing in.
Well, you are definitely doing worse in the UK than anywhere else in the world because you've had more millionaires leave than the entire world. That means that people with money, capitalists, are more afraid of living in the UK than they are of living in communist China and Russia. That is pretty frightening. And there was a report here from Henley and Partners. Now, they said that in 2025 alone, 16,500 millionaires have left your country, which is completely insane. And they took with them $66 billion of wealth. Now, our Labour Party, led by Anthony Albanese, is pretty keen about the whole tax the rich thing. Now, my fear is that when all the rich people leave who pay the bulk of the tax bill, our government still have all these welfare programs. They've still got all the migrant programs. They still have this net zero obsession, and someone has to foot the bill. Are they going to get rid of their projects, Chris, or are they going to raise taxes on the middle class and working class?
No, there's no question. The so-called broad shoulders of the middle class and the working class are just going to pay and pay and pay. And when you look at the flight of wealth and the fact that people would now rather live under an Islamic regime, albeit a light touch one at the moment, in the Emirates or Dubai, UAE, or even Saudi Arabia than live in the United Kingdom, it really does give you a sense of foreboding as to what's coming around the corner. And the UK is successfully turning itself towards becoming a caliphate anyway, for reasons of inward migration. But no, there's no question. The government is quite relaxed about seeing income tax continue to spiral, taxation as a percentage of GDP continue to increase, and for the working and middle class to continue to bear that burden.
Well, Australia got rid of its inheritance taxes over here, and so any whisperings, which we're hearing now, about its return, they are enough to sink the government. We hate inheritance tax more than we hate anything else. So our Labor Party has to be very careful about it. Now, I also heard that 142,000 millionaires across the globe are country shopping. Now, as you correctly said, many of them are heading toward the UAE, but they're also heading somewhere else. They are going to Donald Trump's America because he set up this thing called a gold card.
$5 million. For $5 million, this could be yours.
Which is like a green card to incentivize rich people to bring their expertise, their wallets, and their business over to America. Is America going to be the capitalist Western nation that grows as the rest of the West, particularly Europe and the UK and maybe even Australia, goes downhill?
Potentially. I think that, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the days of Western hegemony are almost over. All of the economic indicators point to this, and our mutual friend Mark Stein waxes lyrical about the sort of 75 to 80 years principle. And since Bretton Woods is now 75 years on, he's not a million miles off the pace. I think Trump's gold card idea is a sticking plaster. I don't think it's a bad sticking plaster. And certainly, if wealth were to come my way, I wouldn't mind spending a little bit of time on the Sunshine Coast of Florida. But I think in reality, the big beautiful bill, for example, which is really what caused the fallout between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, which has been described as big and beautiful, is in fact, yet another splurge of spending. And so I question the long-term macro position for the US, but certainly in the short term, there's no reason why you won't see an influx of capital into the country in the form of personal wealth.
Well, there was one headline just to finish off this topic, and it was about the 9th richest man, shipping tycoon John Fredrickson. He was leaving for the UAE as well, but he had a quote here I want to read. He said, the UK is starting to remind me more and more of Norway. Britain has gone to hell. And then he also added, the entire Western world is on its way down. So that echoes what you were saying, where it's a general trend of the West as it starts to punish people who work hard and earn money. No surprising, people are leaving who work hard and earn money, leaving us with, high taxes and people who don't want to work. It is a recipe for disaster.
I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade.
I wanted to talk to you about the land of America, the land of billionaires and borders of Donald Trump. Now, he has said that border crossings are at zero. They're probably at almost zero, let's be honest. Yeah. And we had the Vice President, J.D. Vance, came out and he said, and this is a quote from him, "This is the most important issue confronting this country, and it was certainly the most important issue that was destroying this country over the past 4 years. That is the issue of illegal migration. I am happy to report that 1.5 months into the Trump administration, we had illegal border crossings down 99%. How does that compare to the UK, where we hear stories every day about hundreds or thousands of people arriving by Zodiac, putting pressure on your country? Does the UK have the will, the Trumpian will, dare we say, to retake control of its borders?"
The only thing we're taking back control of is the dinghy boys. The borders are open. If you arrive by dinghy, it's a 4-star hotel. It's money in your pocket. It's a mobile phone, and it's £1,000 a week job at Deliveroo or Just Eat. No problem at all. So no, there is no way the government's taking back control. I mean, illegal immigration represents about 6% of all immigration to the UK. And so it gets all the attention because it's very visible. But the reality is the visa system in the UK is wide open. It's open to abuse. There's lots and lots of overstayers. And from a start point, we have at least 1.2 million people in this country that shouldn't be here, that should be going home. And unless and until there is the political will, which there is not, amongst any of the United Kingdom Uniparty, red, blue, yellow, and I include reformers, turquoise in that. Seeing Faraz the other day hobnobbing with Peter Mandelson, good grief. But anyway, there is no desire to get hold of mass deportations and the remigration of the unassimilated, which is desperately needed if we're to turn the ship around. At the moment, we're continuing to crash into the iceberg and repeat and repeat and repeat.
It's a bit strange to understand from Australia because, like us, you are an island. So you have water around you that should make border control easy. I mean, poor Trump, he has a land border with Mexico, right? To get his borders closed requires a wall. So people are wondering, is the reason that the borders are open in the UK purely political weakness? And how much does it have to do with the relationship the UK has with the European Union and the international courts there, which saying, no, you can't deport illegal migrants. How dare you close your borders? Is it a problem to do with this global governance thing that's going on over there, which somehow the UK seems to have given away its sovereign rights to an unelected board?
It's absolutely signed up to the globalist Marxist world order, no question. Starmer is on record as saying previously that he prefers Davos to Westminster. I can't think why, because there's absolutely zero democratic accountability these days in either place. But no, there's no question. The Kool-Aid of globalism has been washed down with a healthy dose of nasty leftist hardline Marxism. We've lost free speech over here, as you know. You have a situation which I think we may be talking later on, where if you're on the left and you say certain things, that's absolutely fine. If you're on the right and you say anything, that's not fine at all. So no, the UK is in a complete mess, Alexandra. And this situation where you've gone from a population in 1971 that was 93% white British in London, down to 37% white British by 2021 and dropping rapidly. And you have a situation where 5 of your major cities in London, Manchester, Leicester, Birmingham and Bradford are all minority white British. That should be sending shockwaves through any established country that you are losing your country and you need to take it back. But it is not even registering in the mainstream media because they are all in with Starmer. They're all in with the globalist agenda. And whether that takes the form of the European Union or the World Economic Forum or any supranationalist organisation, they're all in with that. They don't care about the United Kingdom. In fact, if you look at what you've just seen with all of these crusty white middle-class liberals at Glasgow, they hate their own country. They hate being white. It is an absurd situation, but that's the one we're in.
Well, at least they believe that now, but I guarantee if they were in a different circumstance and there was nowhere like the UK to run to, they would have a very different opinion of their classical British home. But let's talk about Brexit and let's talk about reform, because you did touch on that before. Now, part of this anguish about what mass migration has done to the cultural and social makeup of the UK was a reason that Nigel Farage was able to lead the Brexit reform. It wasn't just because he was charismatic, it's because there is a genuine grievance among the people of the UK. They wanted out of the European Union. They wanted control of their country. The Brexit was successful, but the Conservative Tories didn't implement it properly. Everyone now admits that they didn't really want to leave. They were mostly Remainers, and they made an absolute terrible job of Brexit. And so now the people looking at reform and Nigel Farage and going, maybe he can actually finish Brexit. Do you think that that is going to help end the Tories and push people into the arms of a movement like Reform, this desire to finally free themselves of the European Union for good?
And we've had enough. We've seen the snarling anger towards our country of Mr. Verhofstadt, the bureaucratic intransigence of Mr. Barnier, the constant stream of insults that come from Mr. Tusk, and we're of one mind. We don't want to be governed by you. We want to govern ourselves.
I think the Tories have done a very good job of writing their own obituary. They don't need any help from reform. The Tories are now a dead husk. They're a misnomered party. They are the unconservative party. They really sit on the centre left of British politics now. If you look at their track record in government, I think their biggest single achievement was the introduction and legalisation of gay marriage. So that they are a dead husk. They are, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter who leads the party, whether it's Badenoch or Jenrick or Chris Philp or whoever else they decide to put in. They are a spent force, and whether they have a renaissance in 25 years' time when it's all too late and they've become a hard left party is another thing. But as a conservative party, for those of us on the right of British politics, they are their history. In terms of reform seem to be speaking in tongues, depending on who they're talking to. So if they're pointing leftwards, it's about one message. If they're pointing to the right, it's another. This situation where Mohammed Zia Yusuf has returned as chairman, not chairman, because nobody has seen David Ball since Yusuf has come back into his post after a 48-hour hiatus, I wonder why, is very concerning. And I think for me, reform and Farage, they're not the answer to Brexit. Brexit is a busted flush. Brexit, as a result of the Windsor Framework, ties us to the European Union, not just Northern Ireland, but the whole of the United Kingdom, to the European Union in perpetuity, without even a seat at the table. We've not actually completed Brexit. We've made things worse than they were before the referendum happened. And you're quite right. When Farage was leading UKIP, it was UKIP that put the pressure on David Cameron and forced the referendum. But unfortunately, once the referendum was done, Farage left the stage, as he wont often to do from time to time, and left it to Theresa May, a Remainer, left it to Boris Johnson, a buffoon, to implement. And not surprisingly, we have what you might term a difficult situation. I was going to use another term there, but I remembered that I'm on certain forms of social media. So it's left the country now in an invidious situation. And Johnson, instead of making things better, actually managed to make things worse through the Windsor Framework.
Can I just ask you about this phenomenon of the Tory party declining? Australia has an almost identical situation here where our Liberal Party, our very ancient and illustrious Liberal Party, is almost extinct, but we don't have an alternative movement with the power of reform. And I say what you like about Nigel Farage, he's definitely threatening the future of the Tory party, whereas we don't have that movement here in Australia. So can an old historic party, I think the Tories are the oldest conservative party in the world, can they collapse? Is it possible that they will be replaced by a different movement, or is that more wishful thinking from the reform side?
I think it's entirely possible. There is precedent for this. It happened to the Canadian Conservatives back in 1993 from memory, and they ended up reconstituting and merging, and then, hey presto, came back, but not in the original form that they were. I think it's interesting, Alexandra. I think there is a real appetite on the right of not just British politics, but politics throughout the developed world for a party that actually sticks to what it says it's going to do, which would be unique in recent history. Right-wing right-wing ideology has not disappeared from the table, except in the minds of politicians. Most people instinctively are to the right. Once you get over the age of 40, if you're still leaning left at the age of 40, there's probably something wrong with what's between your ears. But the ideas that the right has are compelling. But the left has so soaked the education system from literally preschool right through to university level. And then the workplace now, you've got so many millennials that frankly have decided that it's better to not work. They would rather be instantly famous as YouTube sensations and Instagram sensations than actually do a proper day's work. So we have the worst of all worlds. But to address your question directly, I think the Tories are in very real danger of extinction. I don't see a way back for them, certainly not for a good generation, a good 20 years from now.
The essence of socialism is that you surrender quite a bit of power over your own life to the state. Well, we all do that to some extent, but of course it went much further. You pay very high taxes, and they wish to take even higher taxes because they think that politicians can spend money better than the people can spend it. I believe that we were going towards a way of life in which people were constantly looking to the state to solve their problems and to do things for them. You know, when the state does everything for you, it'll soon take everything from you.
It's interesting. I don't know if it was you I was telling or somebody else, but communism and socialism and all the left-wing dictatorial movements, they remain stable throughout history. But conservatism in every country in the world has to phoenix itself in order to remember what it is that it stands for. And I think that's because all political movements err toward tyranny eventually. And the only way for a liberal-minded small government party to survive is to keep rebirthing itself from a zero perspective to then go back again. Otherwise, it will end up exactly where the left is. But that's totally beside the point. You mentioned UKIP. Now, I come from Australia, so you'll have to forgive me. We're not up on all of the UK politics. We talk about reform as almost a description for rebellion because we see Farage and we think, oh, that's the way to combat the left. But there's also a party called UKIP. Can you explain just briefly the difference between UKIP and reform?
Sure. I'll declare an interest. I'm a member of UKIP and I also donate to the party. The principal difference is that UKIP has principles, whereas Nigel's principles, if you don't like them, well, he's got more. So no problem at all with that. UKIP believes firmly in mass deportations of people that should not be here, and it believes strongly in remigration of unassimilated British citizens. So people who have come to this country and have colonised in their ghettos, have no interest in the primacy of British culture, have no interest in the primacy of Christianity, and instead wish to turn the country into a caliphate. Those people need to go home. They have no place here. They never had a place here. And successive governments have encouraged more and more of them to come. And the argument is around GDP per capita, as I'm sure you're aware, is increasing. Nonsense. GDP per capita is actually going down. GDP overall is increasing, but the government doesn't use the per capita term. It just uses overall GDP. So yes, these people do come and GDP does increase, but to quote Andrew Breitbart, politics is downstream from culture. And we are in grave danger in this country of losing our culture. UKIP believes in culture first and economics second, and Reform believes in whatever audience they're pointing at on a particular day.
It sounds like UKIP is very much what people from the outside imagine the philosophy of a reform style party to be, but it actually embodies it. Talking about culture, let's talk about His Majesty King Charles and Donald Trump, because apparently Donald Trump has been offered another state visit to the United Kingdom. He was last there in 2019 for Her late Majesty the Queen, which Donald Trump adored the Queen. He loved her. It was interesting to watch the way that he interacted with Her Majesty. But I'm not sure it's going to be exactly the same with King Charles. King Charles is, of course, an environmental enthusiast. Donald Trump's more of a drill, baby, drill kind of guy.
We will drill, baby, drill.
What are your thoughts about this upcoming meeting? Will it be a little icy, or do you think it'll be just very ceremonial and straightforward?
I think it'd be a combination of both. I think Charles wants Donald Trump here. It'll be about as popular as a fart in a spacesuit, frankly. He's got no desire to share air with Donald Trump. Charles is also fully signed up to the globalist agenda, and Trump is not. They couldn't be more diametrically opposite people. And I think Charles looks down his nose at Trump and sees somebody who is new money, made good, who is a little bit gauche, perhaps almost a little abrasive. And that doesn't really sit too well with the House of Windsor, not with him in charge. And it wouldn't sit any differently, by the way, with William in charge either, because he's fully paid up and signed up to the globalist order. So it's going to be a very interesting state visit. There will be an awful lot of people chewing on glass for the whole time that Trump is here. And I, for one, can't wait, because Trump is box office. It will definitely be a shot in the arm to the British tourist industry. If nothing else, there'll be lots of MAGA merchandise bought while he's here.
I was going to ask you what's going to happen to the streets of London, because since Trump was there last time, and don't forget, last time there was a giant orange blimp of Trump floating in the sky, if I remember correctly. And since then, your London people have been tearing down the statues of their own heroes. There have been the Palestinian flags everywhere. I mean, what are they going to do when Trump arrives? Are they going to have a minor meltdown in the streets?
I'm sure you'll find the usual suspects chanting to free Palestine and praising the Iranian mullahs. And I'd be quite happy to see flights leaving starting today, dropping folks off in Gaza and Tehran. And let's see how they get on when they get over there. But no, there's no question there will be counter-protests. As you know, Sadiq Khan, who is the mayor of London, I think it is fair to say, loathes and detests Donald Trump. Donald Trump probably doesn't even know who Sadiq Khan is, because he's an irrelevance, apart from the fact that he's absolutely destroying the fabric of our capital city. But no, there will undoubtedly be people that decide to take to the streets. And I hope there's a strong counter-protest from patriots to say, we welcome Donald Trump. In fact, the way things are at the moment, I think I'd rather be part of the 51st state than and become the 51st state of the United States than remain an independent United Kingdom. I don't mean that, but you can see the logic.
Let's quickly pick up on that one, because one of the reasons cited that His Majesty King Charles doesn't like Donald Trump is because he was making overtures to Canada, saying, oh, we're going to make Canada the next state of America. Clearly, Donald Trump was joking, because Canada is a very, very, very left-wing state. The last thing that Donald Trump wants is more liberals underneath his banner. What he was trying to do was draw attention to the fact that their borders are completely overrun with drug cartels and illegal migration, and that was his way of pushing it to the top of the press. I mean, Trump does make jokes. It's a part of his negotiation. Did you think that was all a bit silly, that King Charles was getting offended by the idea that Trump was going to somehow take over Canada, as if that's a real thing that would happen?
Yeah, look, Trump's actually got a sense of humour, which most political leaders, with the exception of perhaps Maloney, don't seem to have. When you look at Canada, it's interesting. The Netherlands last year took in 130,000 additional migrants on a population of 9 million. That's 1.5% of the population. But Canada, in the first quarter of 2025, took in almost 1 million against a population just over 40. That's a huge inswell of people. And for whatever reason, Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England and now leader of the Canadian Liberal Party post-Trudeau, managed to get King Charles to come over to Canada, specifically, essentially, to shore up his support. I'm sure officially that wasn't the case, but between you and I think it was. And Charles was willing to go, even though he's recovering, as you know, from cancer, and he's clearly still not a well man. The fact that he was willing to go there and do that suggests that he was taking the Trump threat seriously.
I don't even know how to reply to a monarch thinking that the US president would invade a member of the empire. It would be just as stupid as him coming to Australia and people being worried that America would take over Australia. I mean, please.
When you consider what Mr. Carney just said, that Canada is not for sale, does this make the discussion a little more difficult to start on?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No, time will tell. It's only time.
The one thing that Trump was doing last week is he was over in the European Union at the NATO conference or summit, and all the world leaders who previously were earning brownie points off each other by pretending to hate Trump were falling over each other to shake his hand and praise him for peace for Iran and Israel, and also peace in the Congo, I believe it was as well. What happens to this whole liberal alliance if Donald Trump was right about how to bring peace to these difficult parts of the world?
It was quite sickening to watch, wasn't it? The fawning post his arrival was quite something, as opposed to beforehand, the shall we say, criticism, I'll be kind and polite, of Trump. Look, Trump, when, for example, let's take Iran. Trump decides to use tactical weapons to destroy, theoretically anyway, the Iranian nuclear sites. And quite rightly, I was concerned that could lead to an escalation. But I'm honest enough to admit that I got it wrong. Whether we think it's a lasting ceasefire or not, whether we think the mullahs are serious about having long-standing peace with Israel or not, in the short term, he has removed the nuclear threat from them, and he's made the world a slightly safer place as a result of that. People forget the India-Pakistan conflict that was escalating super quickly, but a couple of phone calls from Trump and it's gone away. People may not like his style of diplomacy, they may not like his shtick, they may not like his rhetoric, but he gets the job done, Alexandra. I still think the US is in difficulty, but on the singular issue of Trump and his approach to war, he hates war. He's always hated war. He thinks it's bad for business. And fundamentally, that's what Trump is. He's a businessman.
I've got to ask you, I've got you on here. This, was it Glastonbury Festival? There was a rap singer there. I'd have to read his name because I don't know anything much about rap. Bob Villain, I'm sure that's a play on words. He was chanting death to the IDF, and I watched the clip and he chanted it many, many times. Well, I'm going to read a comment from the frontman of this rap band. They said, and I quote, "Sometimes we have to get our message across with violence because that's the only language some people speak, unfortunately." I mean, you have to ask yourself, Chris, is this still music or is it something else?
No, it's not music. It's political rhetoric. And should that be happening in the United Kingdom? Should it be happening anywhere? No, it shouldn't. And there should be repercussions, and those repercussions should be strong. I think if we turn it around and the attack was against Islam, for example, rather than Judaism, would the reaction of the Metropolitan Police, would the reaction of the United Kingdom government be stronger? I think we all know the answer to that.
I am starting to wonder if some of these artists in the community are using green activism, BLM activism, and Palestinian activism to disguise the fact that their music isn't what we shall say brilliant. And look, just for fun, I'm going to read the diversity statement from the festival for our listeners and watchers. Their statement reads, "The festival is proactive in embedding diversity and inclusion throughout all that we do, and discrimination of any sort, whether it be on the grounds of race, gender, ethnicity, visible or unseen disabilities, sexual orientation, heritage, religion, age, family status, social class, or education, is not tolerated." I'm not sure they lived up to their expectations there, Chris, but one person did say, and I like this, that the 80-year-old Rod Stewart was the best act, and that says a lot about music today. Do you think they're right on that one?
Now, believe it or not, I did actually watch that set. I haven't watched any of Glastonbury this year. I'm not remotely interested in it, but my wife, bless her, wanted the opportunity to watch it. So we sat down and watched it. Look, his voice has gone. Let's not pretend. He's 80 years old. But he put on a show. And if that really is the best of Glastonbury, then Glastonbury frankly needs to die. I think Glastonbury is in danger of becoming a Trojan horse for all kinds of naughtiness, illiberalism in reality, anti-Semitism, anti-United Kingdom, dare I say, even though it's held in Somerset, which is in England, part of the United Kingdom.
Look, just one quick question before I let you go. Australia's having a massive argument about an under 16 ban for social media. So our government has decided that it is the parent of all children, and they're banning social media platforms for people under 18. And by that, I mean not just X and Facebook and TikTok, they're also banning YouTube, which is, quite frankly, unbelievable. But what they're saying is it's about child safety. The internet is too dangerous for children to be allowed onto it because primarily misinformation, disinformation, and untrustworthy news sources. My argument, particularly what we saw with the festival over the weekend, is that maybe things like rap music pose a greater threat to young minds than social media. Certainly in Victoria and Melbourne, we've got gangs of youth that model themselves after American rap singers. They name their gangs after them. They live out the fantasies in their music. Would you say that maybe we should be more worried about the entertainment our kids are consuming instead of evil social media where there might be political adversaries that we don't want them to hear anything about net zero?
Well, I'm sure that the youth of Australia are familiar with VPNs and how to use them. That's one thing I'll say. The other thing I'll say is it's nice to know that it's not just the United Kingdom that is living through hard left authoritarianism bordering on totalitarianism. This is an absurd situation you've got there where do they really think this will work? All they will do is drive it underground where they won't be able to police it anyway. And therefore, it will only make things worse. But to me, it smacks of almost Kim Jong-un is running the Australian Parliament, not Albanese. But, you know, the track record again, this is what the left do. As soon as they become emboldened with power, they are in power. The right is in office. That's the difference when they're in government. And the left do not want to rescind that power. They want to make it harder and harder for them to be kicked out. They want to control the narrative. They want to suppress the masses. And yet, absurdly, I imagine the 16 to 18-year-olds are the ones that in Australia, forgive me, I'm not sure if the voting age is 18 in Australia, but they're the ones that are more likely to lean leftwards anyway. So this seems a slightly backward move, but then leftism is rarely forward thinking.
Yeah, unfortunately for us, it was the Liberals who came up with the idea, gifted it to Labor. Labor went, yep, let's do it, and said we've got a uni-party ticket on banning people from social media. So our Conservatives aren't even going to get any traction for this when it all goes to absolute hell in December, when they realise that banning children from their favourite activity in their social groups is not going to end well.
You can't make it up. The Liberals, no wonder they're extinct almost.
No, you can't make this up. Look, Chris, it was a pleasure to speak to you. Where can people find you if they want to follow your work?
If they're daft enough to follow me, Alexandra, they're more than welcome to do so. Primarily, I'm on X at just Chris Davies, Davies. You'll find me across social media on that, but X is the main platform that I'm on.
Thank you so much, Chris. And look, if you all love what you're watching, don't forget to like and subscribe to The Spectator Australia. Thank you and good night.